So I am here outside the Albia Chamber of Commerce, and you can see the sign right up here from the courthouse. And we're gonna go through it, and Albia is just a pretty amazing place from its inception and its first name as Princeton up through current day with the coal mines that have been here. In 1985, it became a historical site with 92 officially recognized landmarks in the town of Albia, and most of these records and things can be found in some great knowledge here at the Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to go on in. And notice as we come in here, they've got some pretty cool nostalgia furniture in old Oregon. They've got a lot of different things going on. We come up to the counter. One of the things that we'll be looking at and talking about a little bit is this book, and it's called The Images of Monroe County, Iowa, and Albia's Historic Square. So as we look at this just briefly now, it goes back through, and it's going to have a bunch of things about Albia, about Monroe County, and then pictures that go with that. So as we go through this video today, we'll be stopping in and seeing that. And I see now the executive director of the Albia Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Laura Tino, is here, and she's just going to talk a little bit about what the Chamber of Commerce does, and maybe a little bit about her job and the importance it is to have a good Chamber of Commerce in a town.
I love my job as the executive director of the Chamber. I get to promote Albia, which is one of my favorite places in the world, because we help people, whether they're new to town or you've lived here forever. If there's something you want to know about community events, about any of our businesses, like I said, we're just here to help. We're a centralized hub of communication, and we just want to promote Albia in every way we can.
So I really appreciate her and what she does for the town of Albia. One of the things that I really like is when new people move to town, the Chamber of Commerce reaches out and they give them kind of the list of where things are, the grocery stores, the restaurants, places to visit to get the needs that they need. And we've seen some of those places, Hy-Vee and Mixed Furniture, and some of the others we've highlighted in our videos. So today what we're going to do, and we'll start this now, and we may have to finish it up a little bit, but we're going to do a self-guided walking tour of the square and the Commercial Historical District. So if you come up here, you can do this on your own during this time where we have a little bit of free time. We've got the pamphlet here, and it kind of talks about it, but here's the key piece. And it talks about the different locations that are historical monuments. So we can just start right at the courthouse across the street, and it'll take us step by step. And there's some plaques on the buildings, and we can just go from spot to spot until we hit, I believe there's 52 on this. We'll try to hit as many as we can in this video. There's more in Avery and La Villa. We go out to Buxton maybe if we get a chance. So it's going to be a nice day outside. It'll be a good day to walk around and a good day to learn more about Albia.
Mr. Ratliff, if they would like to follow along with you, those brochures are alongside the buildings on 3 areas of the square and are also on our website. It's albiachamber.org, so you can find it on there and follow along with you as you go.
They're on Facebook too if you want to join Facebook and like them on Facebook. I did that this morning myself, so let's get ready to go. So as we start our tour, the first building that's listed on here and the starting place for this is actually the Albia Courthouse here on the square. So as we approach this, I'm sure that most of you, as you've come through Albia, have seen the courthouse. And it is a 3-story structure, just had some renovations go on here in the last year. And this is where the tour begins. From here we go to the Skeen Block building. The Skeen Block building is on the north side of the square. And as we walk through the courthouse yard, we have the Civil War Monument. Again, a monument dedicated, I believe, to those who fought in the Civil War. We'll take a quick look at that before we continue on with the tour. So it reads, erected or built to the memory of our fallen heroes, 1861 to 1865. It's a little sun glare coming on, but we can see that there. Across the street from the courthouse, you can see it in the background, we come to the north side of the square and the Skeen Block. And I'm just going to read the plaque as I have it on the camera. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. It says built in 1889 by early Albia merchant Elmer Skeen. This building first served as a grocery store on the east side and as a boot and shoe store on the west side. By 1896, Skeen had his own business in the east half and owned part of the business, Skeen's Zook Furniture and Undertaking. So he built furniture and buried people. In the west half of the building, sometime in the 1890s, he put his name on the building's facade. So that's the top part of the building, and you can see that as we back away. This is one of the finest and most decorative buildings in the district. The facade displays a rich variety of decorative elements. The stained glass panels above the storefront are very unique and set this building apart from the rest. The elaborate cast hood molds have an inner panel with the incised East Lake design, while the outer rims have a keystone with embossed grapes surmounted by a sunflower. The building has a wonderfully detailed pedimented metal cornice. The exterior of the building was completely restored to the original condition in 1996 as one of the first projects of the Bates Foundation. The project included new upper story windows, fabricated to match the originals which had been replaced. Original storefronts were rebuilt and new sets of doors were built and other missing elements were replaced. This building is one of 4 key structures in the historic district. So it says it concludes the tour. We started with it. We're going to just step back out into the street so that you can see the facade and where it says Skeen Block and 1889. Great opportunity here as we go to the W.H. Kruger building. It's a building that houses Summers Insurance. So I've got with me Mr. Christian Summers, who is a second generation employee here. He's going to tell us a little bit about their business here in town, and then he's going to talk about the Kruger building itself. So Christian, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thanks Coach. A beautiful day out here in Albia. And yeah, I've been working for Summers Insurance since I graduated high school back in 2013. And my dad has owned the shop for, I think, 10 years now. And it was owned previously by Johnson Insurance that he used to work for them. And that's where we came along.
All right, so with him working here, he's going to go ahead and take us through the plate. So the W.H. Kruger building.
Right here, it says this 3-front building was built by 1886. Its notable architecture details are the metal
Cornice, I think.
There you go. Corbelled brick something and brick hood molds.
Yeah, so this building has housed a variety of business, including a clothing store, boot and shoe store, piano and jewelry store, and a number of restaurants, including the Bluebird Cafe. Young Mr. Summers is back off to work, but we want to again one more time thank him.
Thank you, Coach, and you guys have a great day.
All right, thank you. All right, so next on the tour is the Seaman and Clark building. It's hooked right into the Krager building, and this building looks a little bit different. It lost its character when its cornice was removed. And again, the cornice, if I'm saying that right, is the top part that gives it that little extra flair. It was built in 1886. It was a grocery store for a good number of years. It was also a hardware store, and it was Darby bought out the wood and changed the name to Darby's Hardware and continued to operate the business into the late 1960s. The building was purchased in 1995 by the First Iowa State Bank and has been completely renovated with the addition of a period storefront to not only where Summers Insurance is in the Krager, but it's also hooked to the First Iowa State Bank, which is next here on the walking tour. It says the Iowa Bank building. Built around 1869, this building was originally the west third of the J.C. Morrison block until 1922, when it was completely gutted and rebuilt by the Iowa Trust and Savings Bank. So we can figure out it's been in business as a bank for nearly 100 years. The present building is a textbook example of a bank design from the first quarter of the 20th century, said to be from 1900 to about 1925. The most significant feature is the monumentality of this narrow and neoclassic structure. The building's vertical emphasis is achieved by the decorative second floor and the elaborate cornice. Before it was redone, by the bank, it housed Cal Coots Jewelry until 1891, when he moved to the Noble building a few doors to the west. After that, it housed a number of businesses until the bank bought it. So if you have a chance and we get past this coronavirus, then we can actually go in and take a tour of inside the bank. So the bank is still part of the J.C. Morrison block. Right at the Albia Square, we can come down the Highway 5 here, going towards Casey's Ramaco, going towards the north, and we come to our next set of buildings that are in the historical landmark sign. So as we come through the alley, we're going to see this building right here. So this is the Alex Long buildings. Both of these buildings were built by local businessman Alex Long around 1910. They're constructed of rusticated concrete block. This block was made locally by Alvis Noble. Alvis, along with his brother Ira, made the use of cement and concrete products popular in Albia at the turn of the century. This new product was used considerably during this time period. The most notable buildings to use this material is Governor Kendall's home on East Benton, which was built by the Nobles for their home in 1907. In 1913, J.E. Benton moved his movie theater business to the north building from the Edward Daugherty and Son building on the corner of Benton Avenue and Main Street. He named his new theater the Comet. So here at the Powerhouse, it was built in 1910 by the Albia Light and Railway Company. This building housed the coal-burning generator that supplied electricity for the Albia Interurban Railway System. It also supplied steam heat for the Central Business District and electricity for the city. Longtime residents fondly remember the winter mornings when they would be greeted by the black snow caused by the power plant belching out soot from its large stack. So if we continue on, and we know this as the Monroe County Museum, but as we walk down the street heading east, we'll find this building right here, again made of bricks. It's called the Albia Light and Railway Powerhouse, or otherwise known as the Albia Interurban Railway Barn. The Albia business community successfully promoted the community as a good place to do business. In 1907, for example, private capital constructed an interurban transport system. The Albia Interurban Railway provided public transportation to the 3 railroad depots in Albia. Tracks also served 2 large coal camps north of town, Buxton and Heitman, and the Hocking Coal Camp south of Albia. So it consisted of both open and closed cars that were operated depending on the season. The cars were powered by electricity generated in the powerhouse next door. 2 of the original cars are still in existence and are in transportation museums in Ohio and in Iowa. It was eventually sold to the local electric company, and until recently was known as the Albia Light and Railway Company. The building was sold to the Monroe County Historical Society in 1982 and was remodeled and converted for use as a museum to house local historic artifacts. Mrs. Ratliff has joined me, and she's going to be helping as we go through and read the signs. We're at the 2224 North Main Street building now. This one was built in 1902. It was the home of the Iowa Steam Laundry, one of Albia's cleaning establishments. So with so many single miners in the county, a laundry was good business for a number of years. The building is a basic utilitarian style brick building, which only had 2 large doors on the main level for loading and unloading purposes. The laundry also built the building north of this in 1910 through 1913 period, which was a similar style. That building was later remodeled for other use, and stucco was applied to the exterior to make it appear more modern. Historic note though, in 1853, a man, James Madison Willis, traveling through Monroe County, described Albia in this way. Albia is distinguished only as being the county seat of Monroe County, possessing a good courthouse and being nicely located. It bids fair for the future. Monroe is a rough county. So as we go down the street here, just a few steps away is the old firehouse. And I'm not sure there's a placard for the old firehouse, but here we are. We can see the firehouse. Oh, it might be right here. It sure is. It's the Albia Fire Department. Built at the turn of the century, the north building has been home to both Albia City Hall and fire departments. Horses were kept in a barn. I'll let you go ahead and finish reading that. Again, remember just to hit pause if you need more time to read it. That takes us to the end of this portion of the block. And again, you can see it's a nice sunny day the day I'm recording this, which is always good. Albia has been around for a long time, and we've been here for 21 years, 22 years now. So we've been here quite a while. As we reach the corner of the square, we've got a little bit different style of building. We can see that they've got ornate objects on the walkway that goes around to the upstairs of this building. This is currently the eye clinic, but the Edward Doherty and Son building. The Italianate building was built in 1886 by Edward Doherty. Following completion, he moved his furniture and undertaking business that he had started in 1873 into this location. Around 1900, Doherty moved his business again, this time to the south side of the square. Unfortunately, on April 4, 1904, a disastrous fire burned the west half of the south side of the square. Like other business owners, Doherty did his best to save his building. He was not successful. The fire took half of the south side and Mr. Doherty's life. Around 1912, J.E. Benton set up the Scenic Moving Picture House here. The Scenic was just one of the several early moving picture theaters located in Albia during the early 1900s. This shows the wealth that was generated by the coal mining industry. Down the street, we come to the King Opera House, and we know that the King Opera House is currently under renovations. It says the King Opera Block. Dr. S.M. King saw a need for a new modern opera house theater in Albia, so he built the King Theater in 1903. The new theater was more accessible to receive the long props of scenery carried by the road shows and to accommodate a better class of theatrical productions. Now this is currently the H&R Block building. We see here that it was constructed in 1914. It's got some neat engraving in the corner post here. Up to the east side of the square, we come around. Mrs. Ratliff just tripped on a crack in the sidewalk, but she's okay. We come to our next location, which is a Townsend corner block. So this building has the distinction of being built to replace the last frame buildings on the square, which burned January 1902. The most unique feature of this building is the brown Milwaukee brick from which it is built. Fred Townsend was very proud of this special brick, showing it to the Friends prior to the construction of the building. As we continue the walking tour, we know that over time many businesses have come and gone in each of these locations, but the great thing about the construction behind these buildings are, for the most part, they've lasted for 100+ years. So as we get to the South Main Street, the building is believed to be the first brick building built on the square and could have been here as early as 1855. It is the only remaining example of this type of building design popular throughout southern Iowa from the 1850s through the 1870s. The land occupied by this building was the site of the first courthouse, which was built in 1847 and abandoned in 1854. Bringing us back to where we started this morning, and this was built in the 1900s. Built in 1900, it was a double front building. Around 1905, it was remodeled into one store. Astor Masonic Lodge 505 has been located on the second floor since 1922. So as we look up, we can see what they're talking about as we look at this building. Again, many different businesses taken up in the same locations. This is a 2224 South Main Street. This building was also built in 1886. Unlike its neighbor, it relied more on lower cost elements for architectural detailing. Notice the brick hood molds on the building, which were not costly but added a degree of class to the building. The pressed metal cornice is in excellent condition and a good design. Corbelled pilasters add to the strength of this building structure. Historical note, in 1848, the first tavern hotel was built in Albia was here. It was a wooden structure measuring 15 feet by 18 feet. The building also had a loft where guests could stay. This early business was owned by D.A. Richardson, who was said to have fought in the Black Hawk War of 1832 with Abraham Lincoln. So a fun fact for you, I have been in Albia for many years, and I didn't realize that each of these buildings had the plaques on them marking them as the historical sites. So this is now People's State Bank, but it wasn't always People's State Bank. So what now is the O'Reilly's building. This was the 128 South Main Street. So this building was constructed prior to 1910 as a double front building. Early photos show Powell and Dawson operated a machine work, auto repairing, blacksmithing, and horseshoeing business here in both fronts. That in itself says how much about those times, as the whole country was changing from animal powered to mechanical powered vehicles, and it's obvious that business was changing to meet the needs of its customers. The original building fronts were almost all glass, with 2 large central glass garage doors spaced evenly in the building. A historical note here is the first permanent settler in Monroe County was John Black Gray. He came here the first day on which the land was open for settlement, May 1st, 1843. He was born in Vermont. He had moved to west to Burlington, where he was credited with naming the city in March of 1934. He had moved into the Black Hawk Purchase in January of that year. Across the street, I really enjoy the Inspire You All Things Good building. We looked at that at one time. They have some apartments upstairs, and it was going to be really expensive to fix it up, so we chose not to purchase it, but it would have been really neat. Over here on this side, we see the 117 South Main Street building. It was built in 1906, and at that time was a triple front building housing a blacksmith, a plumber, and a feed store. The south building was built by 1913 and housed an agricultural implement dealer. Through the square, we noticed the courthouse, and on the corner is the E.W. Byers building. This building was built in 1883 and until the 1930s had 2 storefronts. It was remodeled for 1 store. It has been home to a number of businesses, from a restaurant and bakery to a boot and shoe repair. One of the traits that makes the building unique is its external stairway and balconies. Although the original wooden stairs and balconies have long been replaced, the new wrought iron ones are similar and do not hurt the integrity of the building. So as we look at these, we see that what they're talking about, the stairways going up. Got some iron windowsill right here. One other point of interest is that the original owner, Byers, put in his own brick sidewalk along the east side of the building, which was not a common practice during that period of time. The sidewalk actually remained there until recent times, when it was replaced as part of the Iowa Highway 5 project in 1995. So as we walk down this street back in 1997, when Mr. Ratliff first moved to town, I lived in this next building. I lived upstairs. And those apartments that were there. That's the 2224 building here in Albia. As we cross the alleyway, we see again the bay windows sticking out from the top, and this is the original People's Savings Bank building. It was the only survivor of the fire of 1904. It was built around 1900 by the People's Savings Bank, serving as their headquarters until 1907. When People's National Bank took over the building and operations, they remained at this location until 1953, when they moved the bank to its operations on the southeast corner of the square. When the bank moved, Hugh Lundy opened a law office here, and in some form that office is still located there in 1996. That's when the plaque was put up. Being the only building to survive the fire of 1904 has helped make this building unique. So if we look up, we can see those arched round windows that they're talking about. They were replaced and new windows were put in, but they are the same design that it always has been. The new Perry building. It was built after the fire of 1904, relies on 2 features to separate it from the rest of the district: the color of its brick facade and the only example of the bead and reel motif in the district, located below the cornice on the building. This building and the one that burned in 1904 were both built as an investment by T.B. Perry. The senior Perry served on the first state board of education, having been a school teacher when he first came to Albia in 1853. He also built the National Register Perry House on Benton Avenue West. so we can see the different design in the windows of this building. Hardware store turned dance store, studio. Many of you may do your dance there. This is the T. Caroline Atchison building. During this time period, one of the best ways to invest your money was to put it in real estate. Atchison was one of several business people in Albia that followed this belief. After her husband, a local doctor, passed away, she built a 2-story brick building at this location and lived above it while renting the first floor out. After the fire of 1904 destroyed that building, she built the one you see now. The building originally had 2 storefronts and was used for a variety of businesses until the early 1930s, when the central staircase was taken out and the first floor was made into one store. During most of the time since then, Gamble's department store, followed by True Value, occupied the building. Get to the southwest corner of the square, we get to the new Low building. The stone facade building shows the influence that the new courthouse had during the early 1900s. This building has wonderful details, especially the wheat garland above the second-story windows and the projecting cornice. From the time the building was constructed, following the Great Fire of 1904, it has been home to a drugstore, the first being Draper and Laughlin. John Hess, the founder of Hess Drugs, started out working in this building around 1907 and later bought the business. In 1945, this building was gutted by fire and was rebuilt by the Hess family. Across the street, we have the Henyon block. This original 2-story building is believed to have been built between 1890 and 1898 and occupies the site of one of Albia's early livery stables. Fire maps show a livery side of this building as late as 1913. The owner, M.E. Henyon, was a pioneer farmer, having come to Monroe County in 1851 and farmed over 860 acres in 1878, which would have made him a man of some wealth. Following a fire in 1904, the building was rebuilt and that mansard roofed 3rd story was added. It was occupied by the Knights of Pythias for a number of years before being converted to a rooming house. So as we get to 10 Washington Avenue West, it was built in the early 1900s as a reflection of the earliest 20th century's interest in simplicity. The building is straightforward in design with a few simple decorative elements. The few decorative elements that were on the building, including a brick cornice, were removed following a disastrous fire in 1952. Historical note, in 1897, a ham cost 9 cents a pound. Coffee was $1 a pound, and granulated sugar sold for $1 per 17-pound bag. We're now back up on the square at the J.H. Love's new block. Along with many of the other buildings in this block, this building had to be remodeled after a fire in 1903 and does not have the same facade that it had when it was built in 1894. So the Oddfellows Temple. Despite being built in 1893, this building's facade, like others, was remodeled at a later date. The remodeling took place first in 1903 and later in 1930, after fires destroyed much of the building, including the 3rd floor in 1930. That fire was so intense that it ignited the lumber yard located 1 block to the south on Clinton Street. It started the roof of the T.B. Perry House 2 blocks to the west on fire and spread ashes throughout the town. And just a few inches away, we have the Albia State Bank building. So this building was built before 1886. The new front was put on in 1903 by the Albia State Bank after fire ruined much of the building. This new facade is representative of the influence that the new stone courthouse, built in 1902, had on the commercial buildings in the district. One thing that has stayed the same is the fact that there has been a barber shop in the basement since the building was completed in the 1880s. I'm not sure if the barber shop is still open or not, but we see the barber's pole. As we approach what is now Mixed Furnitures, they are in the William Moon and Son James Finney building. It was built in Italianate style, features cast hood molds, metal cornice, and an almost original 2nd story. It was built by William Moon and his son, and the south half was built by James Finney. Both Finney and Moon were pioneer merchants Finney immigrated from Ireland to Monroe County in 1856 and started his business in 1858. Moon was here prior to 1876. The Albia Hy-Vee grocery store was located here from 1936 to 1957 when it moved to a new building off the square. That had much to do with changing the Albia business community forever, as the modern supermarket began to replace many of the mom and pop groceries, meat markets, and bakeries located in the historic district. The Fish and Elliott Duncan building. It was built in 1869 and originally was red brick and had 3 second-story windows arched at the top. In 1912, Mark and Minnie Duncan purchased the building. At that time, they remodeled it as it appears today. As we get to the northwest side of the square, we get to the Miller Loeb block. This building is one of 4 key structures in the Albia Historic District. It is important to the district for a number of reasons. Among those are that it is the only building in the district to retain its original wood cornice. That cornice is highly decorated with large round scrolls and brackets. It's believed the building was built during the Civil War, possibly as early as 1863, by Henry and Lewis Miller, who were early feed dealers here. Today is an antiques and more store, which is pretty nice. If you haven't been in there, you might have saw some of those items in a previous video. I believe it was episode 1, maybe episode 2, RPMs. This is known as the National Bank Block. It was built in 1875 by the Monroe County Bank. It's one of the least altered Italianate buildings in Albia. The building is owned by the Robert T. Bates Foundation. Mr. Bates was instrumental in the restoration of the Albia Business District, and upon his death in 1995, established a $2.5 million foundation for the purpose of preserving historic property in Albia and Monroe County. Come to the back onto the square, we get to the Sam Noble block. This is where Farm Bureau Insurance is now. It was built by Sam Noble in 1890. He was born November 30th, 1819. This brings us to the Samuel Noble building. It was built in 1891. These 2-story double front buildings had a house number of businesses over the years. So as we get down to the next one one's where we started today. On the square with the skiing block, and again the skiing block with that ornate stained glass windows, making it a pretty spectacular sight to see here in Albia. We hope you enjoyed going on the tour with us today. We know that we have enjoyed seeing it. It's been nice to get to read all the placards here in our hometown. Again, I've been in Albia since 1997, and this 23 years later is the first time that I've actually stopped to read them. So I know that if you haven't learned anything today, I know that I have, and I appreciate that learning. One of the key things that I learned today is that there were a lot of fires between 1903 and 1930.